Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a Ko-Fi, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout of thanks and appreciation to Cannabear, Gary Hughes, Measured Flat, Chris Wouters, Mr. Amish, Sensual Goat, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, The Name's Burley, Twad Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Flat Earth Travolta, JMails24, Unimento, M926, Endless, Goldie McKinnon, Retro Bill, Level Plain Poem, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B. Styles, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server and G+, and you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
So she's like begging him, stop, can you please just stop? It's not true, I don't believe in it. I said, well, I'm sorry, Nicole, but this is not a believe, disbelieve, or agree, disagree. We're talking about the measurements, and that's not an argument. She didn't say nothing. She was just like, well, I don't want to talk about it. Can't beat that, buddy.
Yeah, we were talking with Humble about the sky. By inference, the sky is also flat. And he was wondering if we agree with that statement. And I said, yes, of course. The co-altitude angle would give us that notion, at least.
Seems that way, right?
You say seems that way or is that way?
That's how we measure it.
Seems that way, because the sky doesn't abide to our geometry, does it?
Yeah.
It seems that way.
I say seems because I never went there. I don't know, but everything points to it being that way, right?
What do you say, Nathan?
That's how we measure it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was the
Could it
first time
possibly-
I shut my system all up.
Could it possibly be that we measure it that way, but it isn't that way?
What was that?
Well, I said, could it possibly be that we measure the stars as flat, but they're not flat?
Yeah, we've no idea what the sky is.
That,
But the way we measure them is parallel to the ground, represented as a dome when you take the angles from a flat plane. But that doesn't mean we know what the sky is, but we know how we deal with them. And the principles that we do measure with them hold true always.
Okay. And I'm not a dome advocate, by the way. I'm just wondering you guys' position.
yeah, I don't know about the The whole thing is we can establish geometry on the ground. We have the geometry on the ground. The sky, I would be hard pressed to prove the sky is curving or going straight. Because how would you know that?
Why would we have to?
Well, you wouldn't. You wouldn't have to either, but the question's being asked, is the sky flat? Well, in terms of how we deal with the angle representation, you could describe it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you know what the sky is? No. Do you know how the positions above the ground are represented at a given time? Yeah. Is that useful? Very. That's it. That's what you know. You can't take these processes and extrapolate out knowledge about what the sky is from them. You only know what it's doing, where the stars will be above, at what time. That's it. That doesn't tell you anything about what they are at all. So to not having a go at you, Righteous, but to sort of ask that question is to kind of suggest that you don't appreciate that the process can't give you those things. A good understanding of the process would tell you this is never going to tell me what the sky is. Knowing where a star is above the ground at a given time is not going to tell me what that star is.
Exactly.
Tells you about the ground, though, because you're measuring that.
What's the name of the show, anyway?
Sky Earth debate.
You guys don't realize the victory I had yesterday. I shut my sister-in-law up with measurements. She could not argue with me. So she said, I don't want to talk about it. I said, that's fine. And we left it at that.
Right, because the epistemology of the word measure is to know. How do you argue with somebody that knows?
And she knows that.
Yeah, and it's part of their rhetoric that it is measured flat. So she kind of, when she thinks about her own rhetoric, it can't be easy to deal with that blatant contradiction.
Well, here's what's happened. I'm going to tell you because I know my brother doesn't spend enough time here. He has been coming in and watching it on YouTube, but he hasn't spent enough time. He loads her with the feast of nonsense. Ice walls and bird and there's places beyond the ice wall, and I can understand why she resisted. Wouldn't you?
You're asking the wrong person.
Yes.
John did resist the Feast of Nonsense and mock flat earthers for using those crappy arguments, didn't you, John?
Yes.
I think you should go over that video I posted with on Rogan with that actor Terrence Howard.
I've already picked some accounts, I'm afraid.
Well, another day it's fine.
I seen that.
If you pick something
I
else,
watched the. Hold on one sec. I just want to point out. I watched that video you released over the weekend with the guy that said, "When you talk, you create gravity."
Yeah, that's funny.
There were some great clips from last Friday's show. I tripped out a whole bunch. I think I got five clips out of it.
One of them you had going really fast. I enjoyed that one. You had the speed up on it, right?
Yeah, you can't really call it a clip if it ends up being like 45 minutes long. So, there was a section. It never seems like it's taking an hour to do something when you're doing it. But by the time you've gone through 15, 16, 17 repetitions of you can't have 90 degree at a curve baseline, you have chewed up an hour. And you do want to get in, because at first when I started editing, I was thinking, well, what I'll do is I'll trim down each repetition of the claim so that it's just me saying, that'll be the 13th time, that'll be the 14th time, without actually just having it repeated. But as I listened through it, I'm like, no, actually, this does tell a little story right up until the point where I'm leaning on the fact that he won't tolerate the question. Because it's the end, isn't it? The moment he concedes to that question, it's the end of his religion. It's the end of his viewpoint. You summarize it in a different video. It might be in the same video. I forget, John. But you summarize it. You're like, it's not an easy place to be cognitively. And I've never thought about it like that. You just think, are these people just like paid chills? Are they paid to behave the way they do? No. If you've got a position that you're holding and you understand it reasonably well, and various aspects of stuff that gets debated like navigation you understand reasonably well, and as you start explaining it, your opponent says, there you go, you've just proved my point for me, you've just measured a flat earth. You've got to do something mentally because you're trying to lean on your knowledge and understanding of how globe shaped the flat earth measurements make it, and you're trying to get around that somehow. And he couldn't. There's nothing he could do. I mean, at one point while he was flailing, I'm really done. At one point when he was flailing, he's like, "What about the heights?" I mean, he threw it in a much worse way, but he's just, like literally just flailing away from the point. Now, I won't concede, but what I will say is, if we do use it in that way that makes Earth measured flat, you can't get the heights. He didn't say that, but you're like, so you've got to go somewhere else from this and show how it doesn't work. But you're not willing to concede that you can't have your bent Earth meeting this GP point. He refused to concede it. He wanted to take it anywhere but the concession.
Well, that's the thing, though. The calculation, all you can do with the calculation is verify the calculation is false against the measurement. If it, if it contradicts the measurement,
Flowers,
it's
can you pop yourself
wrong.
on mute? Thanks. Again, John.
If it contradicts the measurement, the calculation is wrong. Just like if the theory disagrees with the experiment, it's wrong. If the calculation disagrees with measurement, it's wrong.
Right. Yeah, they've all got the same
Yeah,
origins.
I was glad that you kept him on that 90, though. You kept pointing out that you can't get 90 on the curve, and he would not admit that.
That's the end. Once you concede the origin of the measurement, that's the measurement, isn't it, Neil? Once you concede that that's where everything you're going to argue for a globe has begun, where can you go from that?
Flat Earth.
Well, you can't. That's the point. You can't go to a globe. You can when no one realizes you're doing it. Well, I just measure this angle to a star, and with that angle, and now I'm going to talk about how angles are the rotation of the protractor when it's a sphere Earth. No one will notice. Well, we noticed. You're using flat Earth measurements to make these claims. You can't get away from them. Bush can't. The world's flat. That's how it's being measured, and that's how your globe religion has come from the real world we measure. Now, they really don't like this at the moment. They really, really, really don't like it. Not in a, I don't like the black swan, you're stupid and don't understand refraction kind of way, but in a, there is literally nothing we can refute this with kind of way. And what they can't. To decry the flat Earth measurement of elevation angles decries the very foundation of their globe religion. And I really quite enjoyed telling them that. We know better about your religion than you do. Because at the point they want to brace against the flat Earth measurement that is required for their religion, they're heretics. I don't care if you want to deny it. At this point, I'm better educating you in your globe faith. Now, you didn't realise it was a faith. You thought it was true. Now we're at the measurements that the globe faith comes from. They're flat.
Yeah, the only thing worse than a science denier in their eyes is a measurement denier. Because measurement is their science, they believe.
Exactly. Back in 2015, they were telling us maths is science. They didn't have any maths. They didn't have any measurements. They had plenty of calculations derived from flat Earth measurements. That's what they actually had. If they can tell you math is science and they can calculate a globe into existence, then the globe's real. It's proven because it's science. When I use calculations of a flat Earth measurement to prove we're on a sphere, they didn't know they were doing it.
How did we not catch it, though? That's what I want to know.
Think back to all the times that
Because
Glover used sea level in their argument, and you're like, yeah, it's so commonly used, you don't think, well, that needs a flat Earth. They're using sea level, you're using sea level. We did it for 18 months, 2 years when we argued with the curve calculator.
Yeah, but the thing is, they point at the horizon, right, and say, "See, it's a ball. You see this line of tangency I draw on this in this math from my eye to curve. So that's the horizon. You don't ever look at the line at your feet that's horizontal with vertical and see what it's labeled. You know, it's like it's the dancing bear. It's there. It's just nobody looked at it."
We're covering a different Mark Sargent debate today. We did another one. Mark Sargent versus astrophysicist Dr. Jeff Ziering on the fallen state.
That should be easy.
Yeah, we're going to cover that today.
Has anybody got a problem with Mark Sargent? Before we do.
No? Mark says? Have you got a
he
problem
seems
with
like
Mark
a nice
Sargent?
guy. I've never met him. No, I've never met him or spoke to him, but he seems like a nice guy.
Mark's ace. Couldn't be more amiable. Also, there won't be a live show tomorrow because I'm going to a theme park. Just so you know.
4 more hours.
I mean, I could cut this recording in half and release the second half tomorrow. I suppose I could do that.
There you go.
What was the name of the guy that Mark was arguing with? I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second.
Jeff something or other. ZWEERINK. Ziering.
Yeah, I don't know him, but he's what kind of physicist?
Astrophysicist.
Oxymoron.
Oxymoron physicist.
Yeah, what we call pseudoscientist. Because he is.
I'm still scared that like some flat earthers going to pick a fight with a real physicist and get like whooped on the feast of nonsense. You know what I mean? Like it's set up so easy for that. You know?
Yeah. We need to arm the flat earthers with decent arguments so they don't end up losing with feasts of nonsense claims.
In the video I was suggesting, Terrence Howard says to what's his name, Rogan, that there are no straight lines in nature. Everything is naturally curved. Then he goes on to Rogan asks him, but why would they do that? He said, because 6,000 years ago, they thought the earth was flat. And Joe Rogan's response, like he never heard flat earth before, I don't know, it's very suspicious. When earth is flat. Very weird.
Yeah. But, people 1,000 years from now look back on things that we did or doing now that are normal to us, and they'll be like, what were they thinking? I mean, putting those metal things in their arm and pushing liquid into their bodies with it, that's insane. Why would you ever do that?
Yeah, but the way he could have came so many different ways, but he made it sound like he just heard of flat earth. He could have been like, I deal with this with Eddie Bravo. This is like so many times I'm here, but the way he said it, like it's flat, like a joke, like he's never heard it before. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, that video it's good because he starts getting into Einstein and how Einstein left out the ether.
Okay, we'll cover it tomorrow. Wednesday rather.
Yeah. I got a good one for the vacuum of space or gas pressure without a container. Got a good answer for that when the show starts.
Okay, that'll be our housekeeping opener then. Have you guys in Discord found there's been any shift in attitude since we've been pointing out that their argument for a globe relies on flat Earth measurements?
Is that Nathan?
But have you noticed any difference in attitude?
Yeah, some good, some bad. I mean, most of what I'm noticing is like the resistance from so-called flat earthers to understand celestial navigation. I don't know what the pushback is.
Yeah, I agree.
Something else to learn, innit?
But some people do snap right away. You just mention it. I don't expect much from people. I don't expect that I could help people at all. And I'm genuinely surprised when someone does realize that the earth is measured flat and the consequences of that. So
Well, I had a chat with Lumpy during the weekend, and he says that finally he understands as to why it's measured flat. But it was the second time he said the same to me, and next day he came back with the same nonsense. Let's hope this time the penny finally dropped.
He's mistaking a measurement of flatness for being measured as flat. Now, both can be abbreviated to measured flat. But he doesn't like that his understanding, which is legitimate, of measuring something's flatness isn't what you're doing when you're laying down a flat baseline or referencing the horizontal or any of the things that you do within celestial navigation. They're not the same thing. So I can understand his objection. For all my
Yeah, but
annoyance
we
last
have
time,
the grid system. The grid system is what I mentioned to him again, and I broke down because when you talk about the longitude and latitude in terms of a grid system, it might not make sense to many people.
right.
But that is based; those are the measurements of the flat Earth. Those are the latitude and longitude lines that give us the plane. Those are the measurements.
It was helpful for me to understand why he
Right.
objected, but nothing else.
You don't arbitrarily ascribe level. You measure level. Level is flat. whether you're doing surveying, celestial navigation, anything, you measure it flat. Because measuring for flatness, like when you're measuring topology, you're still measuring against a level or that height.
Yes.
It's annoying that they ain't getting it.
No, I mean, we're not arguing that, though. I mean, we can and we do and have argued for topology flatness in that respect. Normally in rebuttal to some idiot that's saying it's not flat with reference to how flat it is. But nevertheless, that would be a reasonable, discussion point with Lumpy. But that isn't the topic that he's got an objection with, is it? It's celestial navigation that he's got an objection with. Or had. Then didn't, then had again, then didn't. But to answer you, I don't know, just Bill, why there's a pushback. I'll have to clear my throat, hold on. I can only assume it's because it's something new. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, no, go ahead. You were just clearing. I was just talking in between the time you're clearing your throat. Go ahead, and then I'll give my reason.
Well, my reason is just that it's something else to learn, and it's if you've already got a pre-existent understanding of what you perceive to be flat and how, therefore, it should be measured, you're going to object if it doesn't comport with that. And yeah, as I said earlier, other than me understanding why there's an objection, it didn't help the argument. It didn't help the process. It undermined it. All my objections still stand, but it was useful in the respect that now I know why there's an objection. It doesn't undermine the argument at all. That was why I was getting so annoyed with Lumpy. It might seem like that to the uninitiated if they listen in, but there we go. Go ahead, John.
Well, because there's not a problem on the baller side. They're not challenging us with this in the way that flat earthers are. I think for a flat earther, it's so simple that then why are we having an argument to begin with? You know what I mean?
It almost makes you feel as stupid as you first felt when you came off the ball. How did I not realise this? It can't be that simple. Why didn't I spot it before? Well, it's almost the same thing. Like, there's people around us that are seeing it in such a negative way because, no, it can't just be that simple. No, it is. It is that just that simple. Earth's measured flat. Now, we are joined by Neil, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good afternoon.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are on the flat earth, everybody. Keep the good standard up, by the way, Nathan. Keep the standard up because people are complaining that you're too good.
People are complaining that I'm too good.
Good one, Jin.
Thank you, Jin. What a breath of joy on this, well, not unpleasant Monday morning for you. Anyway, any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
I can tell you, but it's too good.
Negative. Without a container, there can be no pressure.
This was actually a prompt for John. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the belief that there's an ever-expanding space above our heads requires a plane of reference to assert.
Yes, it does. That came across on one of the arguments, or that it came across for the first time in an argument on Friday. So a guy comes in and he's debating that you can have gas pressure without a container, and lo and behold, he uses a delta of gas pressure in the form of an aeroplane wing. He's then instructed that he's not to do that for all the reasons we normally give, and I'm not going to rehash them now. Later, he does the exact same thing, but rather than using a delta X plane wing example, he uses a delta X elevation example. So he raises his phone and says that there's been a hectopascal change as he raises in elevation. John pipes up. and I re-edited this, by the way, John. I put the order differently on the edit compared to the live stream. So in the live stream, I then tell him off at length for using delta X again when trying to prove a sky vacuum by appealing to existing pressure. And I cut John off with that point that he's just made, which is to say that the moment you appeal to an elevation in any description, regardless of if it's gas pressure gradients or otherwise, you will require a flat Earth in order to claim them. Elevation is with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. Sea level, if you're going to talk about how it exists within our world. So sea level is a horizontal plane of reference, and that is how you describe gas pressure gradients. Right, John?
Yes, yes. Not only that, within the celestial sphere flat plane model, where everything is observed from the equatorial plane, and you assume the stars are an infinite distance away, if you're a heliocentrist, still a flat plane.
Right on. All of the claims that we make, doesn't matter if you're a concave Earth or a globe Earther, if your model has been derived from measurements of Earth, it's measured flat, like Bob, the science guy's got on screen now with Al-Biruni's origin story for Al-Biruni. You're measuring the height of the mountain off a flat plane. That's the starting point. Earth's measured flat. Even for globe Earth origins of our values, you start by measuring a flat plane. Here it is again. National Geographic going through the process of Al-Biruni measuring the height of the mountain off a flat plane. They both chuckle and snigger when they tell the audience, I mean, obviously we'll have to measure Earth flat to do this. Oh, it doesn't mean it is. Yeah, but we're going to measure this mountain off a flat Earth. Because you have to. That's how it's measured.
Yeah. And then to go one step beyond that with the gas pressure gradients, that one, I felt bad for the guy. It was not an easy place to be. And he seemed like in any other circumstance, he would have been a reasonable person to talk to and a nice guy. He was against the wall. I mean, he had nowhere where he could go.
Indeed. We've got another Mark Sargent video to cover. We did cover one last week, but after I can't remember if I directly shared it with Mark or he just got in touch with me off the back of us covering him. I think he proactively responded, if that makes sense. So he was like, "Thanks for covering that video. Here's another one." Now, just by chance, I had actually watched about 10 minutes of this almost hour-long video that Mark's got on his channel. I don't think I watched it on Mark's channel though. I'd normally have given. I don't think I did because I'd have given it a like. So I think I watched it somewhere else. I'm not entirely sure where, but nevertheless, this is Mark's version of it. All right, I'm almost 100% positive it's the same thing I watched. With this guy who is it Jeff Peterson? Is that this guy? Black guy, quite softly spoken, but no nonsense, conservative type guy. Does anybody know this guy? I see him on shorts videos quite frequently, and he's. I like him actually. From what I don't know the guy very well. Like I say, I've only seen a few shorts videos with him featuring in them. And what he'll do is he'll take somebody with a crazy, outlandish position and be, I'm going to say offensive. That is not his intention, but offensive by just talking straight with no nonsense and, things like we do, definitions of words and holding them to task with reality, which I really appreciate. And when I saw him being the moderator in this discussion with Mark Sargent, I was like, I think you do a good job of that. So, like I say, I got into about 10 minutes of it and then didn't watch the rest and thought I'll cover this on Monday because it was good what I watched up until that 10-minute point. So that's what we're going to be covering today. And as I say, Mark did actually, although he didn't know I'd watched it already, send it me and say, you should cover this. So this is sort of at Mark's suggestion, although I was going to cover it anyway. But yeah, so my pick, but also Mark Sargent's pick. In other words, I feel from his message to me that he was saying, if you're going to cover something, this is the one. So there we go. This is what we'll be covering today. I'm going to just share Mark. It's on his channel, and that's what we're covering. So regardless of if it's Jeff and the Fallen State Channels video, it's going to be Mark that's going to get the traffic. So we were praising him in the pre-show, or more questioning who wouldn't praise him. Right? Anyway, there's a link going by. So if you're not already subscribed to Mark Sargent, you should be. Jolly good flat earther. I've got nothing good stuff to say about him. Doesn't mean we're not going to be critical of everything he does, like we would with anybody who was on here. So he's not unique in the fact that he'll still get grilled if he doesn't say something we approve of or is strictly accurate. But there we go. Doesn't mean we don't like him. Probably higher than most of the people that we cover. So there we go. Just cover that. Anybody got any positive things, hopefully positive things to say about Mark before we do move on? Or if indeed you've seen this particular video, feel free to comment now.
And if you are a viewer that has watched and been criticized by us, the harsher and higher standard we hold you to is the more that we like you.
You're listening, Witsit? Yeah? That he meant every word of that. If you are listening, Witsit gets it. We want you to be a good ambassador for us. That is why we are so critical. If we didn't give a toss, we wouldn't care. But we do, obviously. Yes, very good point, John. Okay, right, we're going to get into this. Unless anybody in Discord has seen this or wanted to comment before we do press play, I don't want to get into the first second like I normally do, and then immediately everyone's got something to say about the video. Anyone from Discord seen this? Clearly not. Okay, that actually sounds.
Yeah, I've seen it, man. I watched it.
Perfect. Any comment?
It's interesting. I wish Mark would really drive home some of the like housekeeping even questions that are brought up on this show daily. Really hammer this astrophysicist pseudoscientist, but he's a pretty he's easy to get along with, and I guess it's just his way. But
who's he? You have to be more specific.
Mark. I wish Mark would just really nail home the points.
Okay.
But yeah, it's decent.
Cool. Anybody else? If not, we'll do a quick sound check, then we'll get into it proper.
Yeah, Tin CBR1 here. Tin CBR1 here, yes. Yeah, I would agree with the last person who spoke. I do feel that Mark, I love the guy, but I want him to be just that little bit more stern, press home like the way you do it. That would be really, really good. You know, he tends to fold sometimes or not quite put it firmly. That's all. That's all I've got to say. But he's a great guy anyway. Thanks.
What is the saying? Iron sharpens iron and all that. That's what we're here for. Mark's a lot more popular than us, though, Jin. Let's not forget that. He's built up a much bigger and better reputation than I have. We might have the better arguments, and I don't think there's many people out there who understand all the arguments that would disagree. Maybe not even Mark, but it doesn't alter his reach. You know what I mean? So I'm doing something wrong in that regard. He's doing something right in that regard. But I do understand what you're saying. You'd like his arguments just be a little bit more pointed. But as I say, that is why we're doing this. Any more for any more? No? Right, let's have a check, see if the audio is okay.
They're just part of a giant projection system. You can make them do whatever you want. And yes, I know you're saying, well, they all look spherical, but we're the only things that's flat. It's like, no, you're in a building and everything you see isn't what you think it is. So gravity, and by the way, to your point of gravity,
yeah, again, we discussed this in the pre-show. So Mark's got this analogy for things like, snow globes and being in a building where you don't know what it is, or the stars are potentially projections of lights, and you wouldn't know any different. Someone's controlling them. These are his ideas and notions that he puts out there so that you've got a soft landing, as we used to describe it. But in reality, to speak to Jin's point a second ago, a more pointed argument is to say that the way we deal with the world is flat. The way it is measured is flat, and the way that the globe has come to fruition is through those flat measurements. A parallel sky is how you will describe and measure the stars for the angles with respect to a horizontal plane that we must be standing on to start that process that has eventually turned into a globe belief after measuring it flat. So back in the day, giving an idea of what could be and how to maybe break free of the shackles of globe belief and heliocentric notions by giving you a softer conception, which Mark has just done. Fine, but not necessarily the way we do it.
Gravity is, you say it's a magical molecular magnetic force that pulls things down to the center of a sphere.
No, I don't say that.
Well, okay.
What do you mean you don't say that? I mean, at first I felt like critiquing Mark for saying you've praised that in a way that makes it seem like it's his claim specifically, but it is. If he's arguing for a globe, there is a globe rhetoric. Now, there are two types of gravity, Einsteinian and Newtonian. Now, when he says, I don't, is it because what you're going to, at a later stage in this debate, convolute which position you'll actually take, depending on what the argument is? Because that is how it actually gets positioned for your heliocentric religion, for a concept of gravity in a fourth dimension, or a force of gravity in Newtonian physics, debunked 109 years ago by Einsteinian fourth-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian space-time bending, neither of which do anything in physical reality. There is no force, it's been debunked, and there is no pseudo-force-based geometry in physical reality. It's a geometry, a conception invented by Einstein that doesn't exist in physical terms. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the belief that gravity is a force is most certainly what every baller will tell you if you ask. Is only after they are challenged that they'll concede and say, it's a pseudo force. But as a force, it is only applicable on an inertial flat Earth. So it's a belief about a flat Earth is what that breaks down to.
Most of mainstream science. I mean, even the most public of mainstream science, Neil deGrasse Tyson, even he says, no, we can't tell you what gravity is. We can only tell you what it does. We can only tell you the symptoms of it. And so they say, oh yeah, it's a force that pulls things down to the center of a globe. And we say, well, it's a force that pulls things down to, a flat surface.
No, we don't say it's a force that pulls things down to a flat surface, because it isn't. There isn't really a force of gravity at all, end quote, Professor Brian Cox. Currently, it's a pseudo-Riemannian bent fourth-dimensional space-time in a mathematics invented by a man named Einstein to overcome the fact that it's not a force. And when you try and ascribe a force to motions, you end up reifying all vectors as downward vectors, so you can ascribe a force to the things that do fall through air in a downward vector. But what about the air itself? That's certainly not massless in their vocabulary of this mass attracting mass or fourth dimensional pseudo-Riemannian space-time bending. You still got to account for what the air does, and it doesn't go down, go boom boom, go splash splash. Gas expands in all directions to fill whatever volume it's got, overcoming the notion that mass attracts mass. The gas that we breathe defies that at its base level. It's unbonded. It is not attracted to each other. It's not attracted to the ground. It's not attracted to anything. It's unbonded, moving in all directions, and has elastic collisions, undermining and defeating all Newtonian claims in principle when it comes to motion. The laws of motion of Newton were not right. Who was that? Richard Feynman?
Well, that is true. Yes. That is true that they're not right. They are a belief, but it's because they don't comport with the measurement. They're only valid on an inertial plane. That's a flat, non-rotating, stationary Earth.
Okay, I'll buy it.
So
to ascribe the incorrect descriptions of Newton, you still need a flat Earth to do it.
Yes. Yeah. The belief that there is a downward force requires Earth to be a flat plane.
Yeah, all roads lead to a flat Earth.
Mm-hmm. And let me clarify here, because there's some people are going to say, what is the flat Earth? And would you mind, Kelly? Can I see the models real quick? we're shown this when we're 6 years old, and this is the ball, and it's
That's the Earth, the round Earth.
Yeah, exactly. Spherical Earth spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, going around the sun at 50, 60,000 miles an hour, and the whole solar system is going sideways at half a million miles an hour, and so on and so on. What's interesting, though, is, and this would be more or less a representation of the flat Earth, a self-contained system roughly the same size. But here's the big difference. This can't exist on its own. It uses a huge support system to.
He just introduced the false dichotomy. That globe is only taking the celestial sphere, which is a flat plane model, and taking those points on the ground and placing them in the positions the stars would be from somebody from the inertial plane. So that's still a flat Earth model. That globe thing that he's putting it up in false dichotomy with a projection of that globe. Yes. No.
Yeah, Mark's using a flat Earth against a flat Earth because when he holds up his spherical model, earlier we had the two Bob the Science Guy and National Geographic showing how Al-Biruni got his H value for the height of the mountain off a flat plane with trig and triangles. Well, now we've got on screen his derivation of the R value after acquiring height. So from B to A, I'll just highlight it with my mouse for the audience's benefit, from here to here is the measurement that they acquired with those two diagrams we showed previously at the beginning of the show. Well, that height off a flat plane parallel with eye level has been removed. It's what was used to get this measurement, and it runs parallel with eye level in order to make this calculation and derivation, inferring that the point surface level, which you measured to get the height, is now fallen away when you rise above it. That is to say, the differential between surface level, which was measured for height, and eye level when you raise up the height that you now have a value for off a flat plane, can be inferred to be a dip with reference to a curved ground. Hold on, you just measured it flat. In other words, the sphere R value to hold up a little rubber globe requires Al-Biruni in this R value derivation measure a flat Earth and then violate the principle of the measurement by curving the ground he just measured flat to give the R value, to give the model. Ergo, the globe for the R derivation is, in its origins, a flat Earth basis. It has a flat Earth measurement and then a globe Earth calculation derived from that measurement, which employs eye level and surface level being parallel with one another. It's a straight up violation of the actual measurement of the ground Al-Biruni stood on when he starts calculating the R value for you to hold up a rubber globe. They're both flat Earth models.
To survive, meaning you need a sun and a solar system and a galaxy and a universe, a universe around it, where this needs nothing. This is just, if you look inside it, there's your world. So the question is, why couldn't that be possible? In fact, if it's easier to understand, which is why.
Now, the question isn't why is that not possible. The question is, how is the globe possible? And it's possible because you measured a flat plane to give you the measurements. That's how it is possible.
It's been catching on as fast as it has. If this is easier to understand than this, because this takes huge amounts of math, geometry and trig and calculus and quantum mechanics and everything you specialize in, why wouldn't people be attracted to this?
Well, and it may be, and I'll say straight off the top, I can't.
Well, first of all, just correct Mark that you don't know anything about quantum mechanics. Let's just get that straight. You're an astrophysicist. Your field does not deal with quantum mechanics. That's real science. I mean, you've been ascribed a more lofty stature than you actually have. But now we're gonna discuss the false dichotomy. Now, what I expect at this point is this guy, this astrophysicist, to slap down on the table the most outstanding globe proof that is irrefutable that there is, because that is his job right now. So let's see what he does.
Prove the Earth is not flat. In the sense that if we're talking prove 100...
So did he just say prove the Earth is not flat? No. Don't disprove and automatically...
Hey, Nathan.
Yes.
He said he can't prove the Earth is not flat. We just missed that soundbite.
Oh, did I mishear him?
Yes, if you go back and listen,
People
he'll say,
be attracted
I
to
can't
this.
prove.
Well, and it may be, and I'll say straight off the top, I can't prove the Earth is not flat. In the
Wow, I take it all back. Well caught, just Bill.
sense that if we're talking prove 100% equivocally, there's no way I can get around. I mean, I've listened to what you say.
Sure.
And you provide a case for a flat Earth.
Right.
Oh, really? I can 100% prove Earth is flat. That is how your globe measurements exist. But for the fact that Earth is measured flat, you would not have your globe faith.
So to the extent someone can provide a case for a flat Earth, I can't.
I'm not going to write a case. No, this isn't a court circumstance. The standard is not a legal standard, right? It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. When I slap down a measurement on this table, it's beyond all doubt. There is no doubt. There's not even a question anymore. Doubt? What have you got to doubt? Here it is. That's how it's measured. Furthermore, if you deny the measurements, you're denying the base principle of your globe, because all of your calculations will come from those measurements. Let me show you exactly what I mean, for the audience's benefit. On screen now, we have the plane of the ecliptic with an altitude angle measurement of a star. Notice how this angle measurement does not terminate at the globe surface. It terminates in the center of hell. Why would that be? Well, that would be because the longitude and latitude positions that are measured out in this diagram to the celestial sphere are actually elevation angle measurements to Polaris off a flat plane. That is where this grid comes to pass. That is how it's made. Measurements of the stars off a flat plane. Exactly as depicted functioning here with a surplus to requirement globe in the middle of it. Now, the only thing this globe could be useful for is putting little markers on it with degree measurements on it and calling it a protractor, because that is precisely what it is. It's a protractor with a flat base over a flat plane, because that is how the star measurements are actually done in reality, and how this grid system, mapped upwards and outwards on the celestial sphere, makes its way onto our flat maps. They have to back engineer the flat Earth angle measurements off a flat plane into calculations that get transposed onto a sphere. Or to put it in a shorter form, Earth is measured flat to give you latitude and longitude to wrap around a ball and claim we live on a sphere. That is not contentious. That is a fact. We will measure elevation angles with respect to a flat plane. We do turn those elevation angle measurements into the latitude and longitude grid with respect to the Sun and Polaris. And you do stretch those flat Earth measurements of the world we actually dwell atop around a ball. That is how it is done. Not probability. Not beyond a reasonable doubt. There is no doubt. There is no question. Earth is a flat plane.
Can't prove that it's 100% wrong.
Right.
I can prove you're 100% wrong because your calculations of a sphere Earth are derived from measurements of a flat Earth, violating the principle of the measurements in the first instance, making them wrong if you reify them into existence. We don't stand atop a curved surface. That is simply not the case. The measurements prove it.
Now, this is the challenge I have, or why I wrestle strongly with it, is that one, there's a lot of data that personally I have, as well as scientifically I have, that just points to the Earth being round. I mean,
you're not a scientist. Number one, don't lean on your scientific evidence when it isn't a cause and effect relationship backed by experiment. Flat? That's an aspect. You think that's a scientific category? This guy's a charlatan, a fraud, a pseudoscientist, a peddler of nonsense. Flat is not a scientific inquiry. Clown.
There's, I would say, we've got pictures from
A picture's science? You just said science and you've rattled off An aspect, that's geometry. And now photography. Do you think this is science? What fraud.
Going to the moon, and I know you dispute all of that. And so we're talking about very...
What was that? I know you dispute all that. I can unequivocally debunk all of it with the second law of thermodynamics. You haven't got a sky vacuum to travel through the moon to, but what, are you going to put it upon your opponent that he denies it? You should be proving this stuff. Notice at the beginning I said that he should be slapping on the table the best unequivocal globe measurement proof, whatever you want to call it, that there is, as that is his job in this arena. He can't do it. We can. We can prove beyond all doubt, as that's his standard. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond all doubt. Earth is a flat plane. That's the standard that we can lay down here. Please share the show. 91 people watching, a little bit less than usual. We're laying it down. We're putting some smack on the table. Earth is flat.
Nathan.
Yes.
Nathan, he is giving his best proof, Nathan. That's the problem.
Yeah, this is his standard. You're right, Neil. His standard for proving a globe is telling Mark he can't 100% disprove it's flat. You should be. If you had 100% proof it was a sphere, that would unequivocally disprove it being flat, wouldn't it? You just don't have that. I do. I have the antidote to your lack of evidence, which is to say we can show how Earth's measured. And if you deny it, as I said earlier, you're denying the genesis of your globe faith in reification.
Things there. But there's a lot of things that the simplest explanation is that we're actually on a globe. Now,
sorry, that's called a baseless assertion fallacy. The simplest explanation is that we're on a globe. Okay, because... no, that's just the simplest because you were raised with that faith. So it's simpler in terms of societal terms only to comport with the religious belief you are on a sphere. That's the only ease that you get from this. Go ahead, John.
It's category error as well. We don't need an explanation. We need a description. That's all it is.
As I've listened to you and as I've thought about it, in order for the Earth to be flat, there are some measurements we could make here that we could...
Well, like latitude, like elevation angles, like the ephemeris, like the celestial sphere, like the equatorial plane. Earth is unequivocally measured flat. It's the basis of your globe faith. I'll keep saying it every time you say that we could take some measurements here and there. Yeah, they'll be flat for you to calculate your globe into existence.
Dabble with, but there needs...
What would they be? You could dabble with them. I just laid them down on the table 4 times in no uncertain terms. Latitude, the grid on the flat maps that need elevation angles to work flat. Yeah, they're all flat. That's how we navigate. That's how we've measured. That's how the grid system exists. Everything that we do is done with that flat plane of reference. Earth is a flat plane of reference. That's how we deal with it. What did you say? You could go to your measurements after you say it's just simplest to deal with it spherically. Well, then show us how easy it is to deal with it spherically. What you'll quickly find is you won't be. You'll be measuring it flat.
To be some very high level of conspiracy conspiring against us.
Why did we go from, I could be slapping down the table some globe measurements that disprove it's flat and are so simple to take it as spherical, but we're into the conspiracy, are we? Sorry, globe believers, you should be ashamed. Yeah? This is your priest. This is an astrophysicist. And his argument to affirm your belief is to tell you about conspiracy. Me, I'm giving my audience, I'm giving them flat Earth measurements, I'm giving them flat Earth maps, I'm giving them flat Earth grid systems, I'm giving them flat planes of reference. That's what I'm giving them. And you're giving them conspiracy? It's absolutely pathetic. You should be despised by the people who look up to you, because this is the standard you've got.
Well, on top of that, he's using a logical inference from Mark stating it's flat, right? What would be the implications to other things if it was flat? So astronauts would have to be lying. There's just no other way around it. They would have to be lying. That would be a conspiracy. That's That's where his mind's going right now.
Yeah, he's a toss who's lying. Yeah, we can agree with him. Yeah, they are lying. They've never been to a sky vacuum. They're claiming to have been to a place that doesn't exist, that violates the second law of thermodynamics, gas dispersion. The gas we're all breathing at high pressure would disperse into that area. If it were real, they've never been into an area that gas would be dispersing into. To look back at the high pressure gas as a blue marble, that's total nonsense. So they are liars. But we don't need to lean on that. We can just show our Earth is measured flat, undoing all claims of a globe, because the measurements are the basis of the globe. And they're flat measurements.
To make all of that true. And you've admitted you're a conspiracy.
I am a
you like
conspiracy guy.
conspiracy
Oh, yeah,
theories.
love them.
And so you've admitted there's some high level of conspiracy.
Yeah.
Just in the people I've worked with, I find it very hard to have that level of conspiracy that holds together coherently.
So you'll lean on that. Why aren't you slapping on the table some globe evidence? Why aren't you undermining what Mark's got to say at its very core, conspiratorial or otherwise, with some just flat out globe evidence? Because then it wouldn't matter what Mark said about a conspiracy, would it? Oh, there's a conspiracy to prove it's a globe. No, that's how it's measured. Here you go. But it isn't. Go ahead, John.
I just realized I'm sorry, I was wrong. In his mind right now, he's thinking, if it's not a ball, then cell phones don't work the way we think they do, and technology as we know it is also a lie. That's where he's at. He's not. It wasn't what I was giving him credit for. He's thinking that everyone in science is lying if it's a ball. That's what he's saying.
Right, because he, unlike us, doesn't appreciate that even himself as a pseudoscience astrophysicist is in the category of the pseudoscientists who would be lying. Well, the moment they claim they've got science and haven't adhered to the scientific method, they are automatically pseudoscientists and therefore lying if they continue to say that they're scientists after being informed that they're not adhering to the method that would make them scientists. Now, he doesn't know that, so you can't call him a liar. He's ignorant of the fact that he is a pseudoscientist. Now, when he, in your estimation, is of the ilk to believe that therefore everything's going to be a lie, that's his bloody concern. Like I say to the fundies who come here that start asking me questions about why would they lie, I don't care. Once I show you how Earth is measured, all bets are off as far as I'm concerned. Your concerns become your own, not somehow some problem I've got to solve as a flat earther because you're yet unconvinced of the nature of Earth based on my conspiracy arguments. Because I don't have them anymore. I don't need to lean on anything beyond the measurements of Earth that you use for a globe, and they are flat. That's it. I think I'll give a toss what you concern yourself with about astronauts and their lies. No. Those are your concerns now, aren't they, son? Not mine. And if you're listening as an audience member and thinking, but why would they lie, but why would they lie? I must ask this flat earther, why would they lie? You can ask me. I'll tell you to sod off and I don't care. And it's not interesting or relevant. Because it isn't. Yeah, they are lying, but it doesn't matter. It's measured flat. Makes no difference what people do or what they were motivated by to do it. Who cares? It's measured flat.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. To appeal to whether people are telling the truth or not, it's like I said, it's a red herring away from the actual topic, because the topic is an objective fact. Is it true or is it false? That's the only places you can go with it. Not is it a true or is it a lie? But he's trying to employ an all or nothing fallacy so that when one thing that he believes is true, everything he believes will be true.
Exactly.
And that's where he's kind of pinned his flag.
If I can show that it wouldn't be possible for everyone at NASA to be in on a lie about flat Earth, Earth is not flat, and therefore I retain my sphere reification based on flat Earth measurements.
coherently.
Got it.
I've tried to have parties for people, and it's very hard, even for a short period of time, to keep the party quiet.
Sure.
And those are people who really want it to happen. So I just struggle, to have a global conspiracy of that level is hard. But even deeper, and this is, coming at it from a Christian, I find something more troubling, is that if indeed that we live on a flat earth, that the creator or whoever's put this in place has done things in a way to hide reality.
Sure.
And I could deal with humans are weird, humans
So what? God has hidden certain aspects of reality if Earth is flat. This is pure projection. Go on, Neil.
I'm saying, what is he talking about? How would that be hiding reality?
Because in his mind, Earth is obviously sphere-shaped because he's been born and raised with that belief. Therefore, if it is flat and he hasn't noticed, God has hidden something from him. Devious God hiding this flat Earth from him. No, it wasn't hidden. You just didn't look hard enough. The men who hid the origins of the globe, that would be the flat Earth measurements, that's not God. Gods didn't hide the origins of your globe faith. That would be the flat Earth measurements. That isn't God. It's men. Men
are evil. Humans want to hide things. I can do that. A creator.
Yeah, men can do that, and they have. They've hidden the origins of your globe faith from you. Here they are on screen. The elevation angle measurements to the stars with respect to the flat Earth we dwell atop. The function of all maps, models, and indeed the globe relies on us being capable of measuring Earth flat for these angle acquisitions of stars and sun for mapping. That is how the territory we know has expanded. For example, some of the audience may live on the New Worlds. Why would we call them New Worlds, you ask? Oh, well, because they didn't exist to certain parts of the culture that we have in the Western world currently until they were discovered as we traverse the world flat and utilised angle measurements to the stars to expand that known flat territory. So when we found the new worlds and mapped the new worlds and measured the new worlds with respect to the horizontal plane of reference, the angles off a horizontal plane of reference, and sea level on a horizontal plane of reference, we then colonised these new worlds after they were found in what used to be called space. So to summarise, we found new worlds in space, and now some of you live on them. We found them flat, navigated to them flat, documented and measured them flat, got an idea of the topology itself with reference to a flat plane, and found our way home with angles to the stars off a flat plane. Those are all undisputable facts. Literally nothing I have just said can ever be challenged. There was no ambiguity. There was no factual inaccuracy. Nothing I said could be challenged. Now, wouldn't it be useful if instead of talking about the new worlds discovered flat, mapped flat, measured flat, and when we found our way back, we used the exact same flat systems with angles to stars that developed the grid system in the first place to expand it outwards? Wouldn't it be better if we were talking about somewhere that we did not know and there wasn't certain facts about, that maybe you aren't standing on right now listening to this show with an internet connection on that new world? Wouldn't it be better if we talked about somewhere that no one was? So when we talk about finding it and discovering it in relation to a flat Earth, it's got absolutely sod all to do with the facts of the matter in terms of how we've navigated and brought up our world with these angles on screen now. No, let's talk about Antarctica. Maybe if we mix Antarctica up right in the mix with the moon landings, we've got an entire shit sandwich of nonsense that you can't extract any flat Earth proof out of. So I think that's what we should talk about when we talk about expanding the known worlds. Let's speculate indefinitely about a place that none of us have ever been. I've spoken to one person in my entire flat Earth career who spent 18 months in Antarctica. And all he had to really prove was there wasn't a 24-hour sun down there. That was his testimony in its usefulness. Why would we find any use in this ice-ridden world that we're led to believe is either an island at the bottom of a globe that doesn't exist after measuring Earth flat, or an ice wall, according to the Feast of Nonsense, wrapped around us that none of us have proven to be true? We shouldn't! We can prove Earth's flat with the way it was expanded in our known history. And nothing you say about the measurements and mapping of that process can be challenged. Who's interrupted me from G+? Go ahead.
Sorry. I just, when you were talking about Antarctica and a 24-hour sun, you have to put a fact into an if statement to get an affirming the consequent with it. Because really what you're asking is, if the elevation angle of the sun stays above the horizon for an entire 24-hour period, it must be a globe? Elevation angle above the horizon? What?
Exactly. Every claim that they will use to infer an axis of rotation for Earth to be spinning to give us a 24-hour sun will require a horizontal plane of reference to describe the axis from. If you're going to describe an angle of elevation with respect to the horizon, remaining perpetually above it, then you're describing a flat angle measurement to the sun. There's no getting around it. Everything we do and detail with respect to our ground is flat in terms of how it's measured. There's no ambiguity.
Who both wants to know us but hides himself at that level is really difficult for me to wrap my mind around.
I have heard this before, and that is, are you saying that God is being deceptive? Because if God is all good and all powerful, can he also be deceptive in this case? Would he be? Is it a trick? Because, you know, if it's a trick, we're talking about somebody else. And I would respond with, well, what if it's not a trick or a deception, but a test?
Or what if it was just measured flat and those measurements were used to reify a globe into existence and then have it dangling above all of our cribs from birth? What if that was the case? Because the measurements of that globe came from the flat Earth measurements I'm now going to tell you about, with latitude, longitude, mapping, grid systems, navigation, sea level, everything you could ever use to move around the ground and discover new worlds in space, which we have, and some of you live on them.
Like a puzzle to be solved more than anything else. It's something, and let me answer your first part, which is, you know, can a conspiracy be this big? I'm not saying, like, for example, 99.
It's not. What? No, that's wrong. He's wrong. I'm sorry, Mark. It's the conspiracy. You could apply that to NASA, and that's about it as far as what you can prove. But it's not something is true or it's a lie. That's a false dichotomy. It's true or false. Now, something can be wrong and not be a lie. Why has nobody addressed it? You know, maybe we're just wrong as a Western civilization. Right? Maybe Western civilization was wrong about this thing. Why is that not addressed?
As far as I'm concerned, right, whenever we've brought up our critiques of Mark Sargent, the audience speaks in terms of why they would justify what Mark does and how Mark does it. And I know Mark watches the show, so I'm sorry to speak to you in the third person. You're not in front of me, Mark. Nevertheless, what Mark needs is an upgrade with the same intentions being fulfilled in the outcome with his upgrade. Well, I've had a long, hard think about this, and if you're going to incorporate a heliocentric worldview into your argumentation for a soft landing, then you should do it with a smile. And if you're going to do it with a smile, then you have to lead your opponent in their own belief so that they don't brace against you. I understand this after looking at it for 10 straight years. So what can we offer to Mark for him to be able to do that? Well, we do it in the way that we do in sarcastic terms, with a bit of venom, but you do it in a positive manner. So for Mark, you would point out that when you create the globe with the lines of latitude wrapped around a sphere, those lines are actually areas of equal elevation. We all know this already. But you can say, do you know how we get those for the globe? In other words, you're lulling your opponent into a false sense of security that you're working within the confines of their globe religion. So we saw the moderator, the black guy, nodding along whenever Mark was like, and on a globe, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yes. Wants to nod along. So that's what Mark's leaning on, and I get it. Well, if he's going to continue to do that, but do what we're suggesting in 2024 to our audience, which is lead with Earth being measured flat. Now, we've categorically said something different to this up until now, which is don't mention the globe, right? Why? Let your opponent do that and respond to them with the flat Earth measurements that you know they will require. But for Mark, it's different. But he can lead them into, I can educate you better on the origins of your globe, how it's made. People love knowing how things are made. Well, Mark can lean into that in a positive way to then take them to the origin of their globe measurements, which are elevation angles. See, even in the way I've just phrased it, the audience, if you're uninitiated, most of you are, won't have necessarily caught on yet that I'm about to tell you that Earth is measured flat. You just hear elevation angles, globe measurements, the origins of the globe, how the globe was made. It all sounds so wonderful and globe affirming, doesn't it? Well, that sounds very Mark-centric. So he can use elevation angle measurements from a reverse standpoint, leading them backwards from the globe to the flat Earth measurements, rather than, as we have stated, for our audience specifically, or in our opinion, and it's true, on the tip of the spear when it comes to these arguments, which is lead with flat Earth, on the front foot, be ballsy about it. Earth is measured flat, open with it. I don't need an elevation pitch, it's 3 or 4 words, right? So you can lead with that. Mark, he's got a different bag, he's got a different place, he's been around, he's ingrained in his way of doing things and has got popularity through it. So if we're going to be able to offer him something, it's to say, here's how you can transition from your typical globe-centric way of positioning your argument to lead them off the globe by opening their mind and expanding their horizons from a potential perspective they could have if they're open to it and you offer them that. But if you simply take them along the same path, but with a better understanding of how their globe has come to be in a positive manner, you can show them how the Earth was measured flat for their globe. Everyone in agreement? That would be a way for Mark to do what we're saying, but just not necessarily Earth's measured flat straight off the front foot.
Yes, that's what I was saying the other day when AI was shooting it down. That's what I meant. Exactly what you said.
I still wouldn't.
Mark style, yes.
But for Mark
isn't a debater. Oh, sorry.
I just thought that was going to be the end. Go ahead. I thought after Neil. Go ahead.
Well, Mark's not a debater, so yeah, that's exactly, lead them down the road they're dying to go on, because you know where that road ends, right? It's a long, drawn out way to do it, but if that's the soft landing people prefer, yeah, if you're going to do it that way.
Any other comments? I was going to add, this is what I was going to add when I thought Neil had finished and John started. My bad, John. I won't change my attitude in terms of what I'm preaching to my audience. In other words, and it depends on the person, even if it was directed at someone like Whitsitt. For someone like Whitsitt, he's not leading people into this subject in the way Mark is. He's not opening up their minds after being locked in. He's not dealing with general everyday normies, right? He's at the other end of the scale. He's closer to our end of the scale in terms of where he's positioned and how he's debating. So when we critique Whitsitt, if you compare and contrast to how we're critiquing Mark, you might think, well, why is Mark getting a pass? Do you just like Mark more? Well, if anything, no, it's the other way around. We're more concerned with Whitsitt because he's more at the cutting edge. So therefore, his arguments need to be hyper-refined, and he absolutely needs to be leading with Earth is measured flat on the front foot. Mark, it's somewhat different, and in many ways, it's out of respect. Mark's led so many people to this subject and been able to broaden their horizons in terms of how they view things, to be able to accept some of the information that we now peddle. So I have to tread carefully, because there's very little I can criticise of Mark, other than it's not how we do it at the tip of the spear. Now, it's not to say that Mark's not on the tip of the spear in terms of PR and things of that nature and getting the information out, broadening people's mind, all the things I've just listed. But like I say, that does it's a case by case basis in terms of who does what and how they do it, therefore how we will critique it. So yeah, for Witsit and my audience in general, if you're out in the circuit and you're debating this stuff, the way you will win is to lead with what your opponent needs for his claim, which is a flat Earth measurement. You lead with that, all points will come back to it, and it was your opener. Anything else before I press play again?
99% of the NASA people that work there that turn the wrenches and
Yeah, go ahead. Didn't leave very long ago. Go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick. Sorry, I was just going to say real quick that Friday was a really good example of that. If you lead it with that as your opener, it always comes back to it.
Yeah.
build the fuel systems and build the capsules and everything. They wouldn't have to be in on it. Only the telemetry guys would have to be on it. And that would be the same with any space agency.
See, the problem I have with that is that I have one of my respected spiritual mentors.
You say the telemetry that have to be in on it, right? Well, not so. When you go to NASA references for how the world's actually measured, they back us up. I found one for height. Did I post that in Skype, by the way? Did anybody... I put it in one of the videos as a screen grab. But did anybody see the NASA elevation thing that I posted? Not, I'm going to post it now.
I seen it, but I didn't watch it. He's about to go into a spiritual authority of his. I've been listening.
Okay, well, just before we do, I'm going to put this up on screen just from Master B. I've put it in. I didn't share it over the weekend. I found it when I was looking for a diagram. I just stumbled across it when I was looking for something else, as is always the case with these things. Okay, so this is going to go up on screen now for my audience. Skype, there we go. Doesn't look pretty, but there we go. Let's just let whoever that is, and then I'll explain what's on screen. Eli. Hello, Eli.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Okay, so on screen now, we've got a graphical maximum altitude depiction with explanation, with a kite as the example and an elevation angle measurement with respect to a horizontal plane of reference with 90 degrees below the zenith position of the kite. This is from NASA. So when it comes to backing up stuff with references, I often find that it's not the telemetry guys at NASA having to lie. They don't lie. They tell you Earth's flat.
Mentors is one of the telemetry guys. And so for me to have this guy who's a guide for me to understand and live the Christian life also be involved in a conspiracy, that's a pretty hard thing for me to swallow.
I hear you. I absolutely hear you. Look, I had a chance to speak with astronaut Terry Virts during a thing in London. And somebody asked me, it's like, are you calling Terry Virts a liar? And I'm going, look, he's a colonel in the United States military.
This is an example of like people and how their perception of authority, right? It's all right, well, I'm speaking the truth. There's an underlying fear, though, that if it's not true, then the truth ain't the truth anymore. It seems to be. But that's not the case.
It's like the guy that went to Times Square Church, the astronaut, one of the last astronauts that orbited the moon. He goes to Times Square Church and he declares it, and everybody must believe it because he's Christian.
Well, if I'm right, this what Mark Sargent is doing here is like a tactic to relate to the viewer, the person he's speaking to, by telling him, look, I know how you feel. That's how I felt when because I knew this astronaut. But let me tell you what I found. And that's a good way to disarm people.
What is?
Right on.
What is? Summarize.
Because what I'm saying is, in this instance, though, Mark Sargent is just trying to relate to the guy so that he can make his point. But we didn't finish the clip exactly yet, so let's see what he says.
He follows, it's a full bird colonel. He follows orders and he does what he's told, even if he objects to whatever is happening there. Now, I can't speak for your friend. I don't know what aspect of telemetry he's in, but yes.
He works at flight navigation throughout the solar system. How do we communicate with satellites that are out there? He's very heavy into that.
He would be very.
Need to do a quick plug. Please can one of the moderators dig out a link to Brian's Logic's latest 2 videos on how GPS and satellite communication works with a flat Earth and how it cannot possibly work with a sphere. He shows how it's measured like we're describing angle measurements with respect to a plane of reference and how they're converted into a globe, undermining the principle of the measurements in the first place for satellites and GPS. It was an excellent breakdown by Brian. I love how he says, I'm going to keep this short. And then it's like an 18-minute video right at the start. He says,
but
really short.
You said how it could be done in a flat Earth. It can only be done in a flat Earth.
Yeah, that's the conclusion. But if one of the mods can just share that in the live stream chat for Brian's, like he's getting a lot of shout outs. And Brian's doing some great work at the moment, though. He's doing all the research I can't be bothered to do. So I just watch his video and then I understand it's marvellous. Thank you, Brian's Logic. If you're not subscribed to Brian's Logic and you're lazy like me but want to understand these arguments before anyone else, there's a good chance you'll get that information from Brian and be ahead of the show. So check out Brian's Logic's YouTube channel.
Already done, Nathan. Just posted it in the main text chat.
Thank you very much. It speaks directly to this point that they're debating, so it's worth checking it out. I'm not going to go through it. Don't get me wrong. I've watched both of Brian's videos. Does that mean I could do Brian's Logic's bit and now regurgitate? No, I couldn't. I'm not Brian. But you can get that information from Brian's Logic's video if it's posted in the live stream chat.
Yeah, but with this guy and the telemetry data, right? Yes, he's taking telemetry data. When we look at the telemetry data, it's flat. So this guy's taking these coordinates and then, these measurements as flat and applying his religious belief to turn that plane into the equatorial plane, to inside the celestial sphere. He's doing all those things. But that doesn't make him a liar.
No. You got to have
malice. Maybe a zealot, but not a liar.
No, you got to have malice. I mean, there's very, very few people that we can call liars. Some are demonstrated liars by what we drag out of them on the show, but they're few and far between. There are certain exceptions, but for the most part, that's what we deal with. In terms of the overall liars, because that's what's being appealed to here en masse, right? Is everybody in government navigation lying? No, far from it. Like I just showed with NASA, when you actually get down to the nitty-gritty of asking them how you'll deal with an elevation of a kite, it's not a kite, it's just their example, but you know what I mean. They'll show you how you measure it off a flat Earth. There's no one lying. And when people do that, they're not cognitively telling themselves, oh, well, Earth must be flat then. So the very first example of me saying to somebody that Earth is measured flat was my own sister, when I'm trying to appeal to her after learning celestial navigation with 10th Man, ironically for the second time, having blanked the first out after a sad and tragic death in our family. Now, that particular aspect of navigation was something my sister had to study and do exams on so she could go on boats and navigate the sea. So when I broke it down to her, and she's nodding along with me and accepting unequivocally from her flat Earth sibling that Earth is being measured flat, there wasn't any argument because it wasn't contentious. It wasn't like, no, of course it's not. We've got curved baselines. She's like, yeah, do you not realise I did this? Of course I know it's flat. Now, she's saying that and probably would have said the same thing, I can't remember, but whatever it was in 2001 or whatever, when she would be describing it to me, or my now deceased brother-in-law was describing it to me and showing me the boring process while I wasn't that interested. But they would have been showing me on flat maps with flat charts and, how the flat process worked and describing it flat. Did they turn into flat earthers No, neither of them did. In other words, it's very easy to describe Earth being measured flat without recognizing that undermines your entire religion of being on a globe. Now, just to exemplify this, if you've been in the flat Earth argument for more than, let's say, a year, at some stage, you will have had an opponent put it to you that they also measure Earth flat, but that's just because it's so big. Now, at the time, you may not have twigged that they have just undermined their entire worldview with the actual measurements that they are appealing to. But because they've got a justification that comes afterwards, they somehow Jedi mind trick their opponent into not appreciating that they've just had to measure Earth flat to make the rest of their claim. And then they've apologised for how spherical it isn't being measured in their globe Earth argument. Now, obviously, in the last 4 or 5 months, we've been going, oh my God, this happens all the time. Like, in an argument now with globers, you have to stop them every 5 seconds and go, you'll need a flat Earth for that. Yeah, that'll be a flat plane of reference. Yeah, that'll be a flat Earth angle measurement. Yeah, that'll be a sea level that you can't appeal to. Yeah, that'll be a height you can't get off a globe. We're doing it all the time. So it's so ingrained in us that we will deal with Earth how it's dealt with, that's flat, but never recognise that that undermines the globe religion we all were born with. No one recognised it until now. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in 2024. Going, look, they measure it flat too. They just apologise for how globy it is and after the fact, and no one notices. Every time you hear a globe head say sea level, that is a horizontal plane of reference. They use it all the time. Every time you hear them say latitude, that is a flat Earth measurement. It's in fact the origin of all mapping and territorial claims, regardless of after the fact calculations into various model shapes. That it is the flat Earth origin of everything. We just never noticed, even when they told us how flat they were measuring it. Isn't it weird how they got away with it?
Very weird. And they have to.
But the point is
they can't do it any other way.
The point is I'll have to round this out. I've obviously gone on too long. Bring it back to the actual point. When you suggest that somebody's lying, no, there's a good chance they'll also tell you how flat it is. They just won't twig. That means they're not lying. And in fact, when they disseminate the information to you, they're disseminating it flat, and nobody's any the wiser that it isn't a globe when they do it. No lies needed.
Right. Yep. The measure is to know. So I know it's flat. I measure it flat. But we know it's not flat. No. You just measured it. It's flat. You can't turn around and say, it's not. You just measured it. You know it's flat. So why are you trying to put it in the if statement to disprove it?
Close to...
Let me ask you something about your flat Earth thing.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the Earth is in here, and we're surrounded with this?
It's almost, yeah.
And so the Earth is in there.
Yep.
And are we in there too?
Yes. Everything's in there. The sun.
So we're not on the outside of this.
There doesn't have to be anything on the outside of this. That's the other thing which is so hard for people to break out, and that is there doesn't have to be space. A lot of people say, well, is that just floating in space? And it's like, who says there has to be space? Because if space is simulated in there, like it is in a planetarium, there doesn't have to be.
The space isn't being simulated. Outer space is a sky vacuum, and it can't be simulated. You can't have gas pressure without a container. Shout out to Brian Bender, who says, I debated T-jump, and when I asked him, how can we achieve a vacuum chamber on Earth? The first thing he said was, we need a container. I said, of course we do. Welcome to Flat Earth. Love it. Thank you for the super chat. 112. Go ahead.
The concept that there is a space. The concept that there is a space, right? That was my first point of the show. The concept that there is a space to talk about comes from the celestial sphere flat plane model, that the stars are an infinite distance away, which would require an infinite amount of space between you and them, or near infinite for the ballers. But that belief requires Earth to be flat.
Right on.
To be anything outside. I mean, it could be, biblical side, could be God's footstool.
So you're saying that this is not floating in space somewhere?
No, it could be
somewhere.
I get what you're saying.
He's obviously done a quick googly search and found images of a pizza pie in a sky vacuum. So it's like, this isn't floating in space. No. Space is a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. This is the first thing you've asked, and the only time you've piped up, and you're the only person I recognise from these debates so far that we've critiqued. We've done loads of them, so to actually see a familiar face is quite nice. Nevertheless, it's the first time you've piped up, and you're asking if his tin, representative of a, let's call it a pizza pie in a sky vacuum, isn't floating in space, when space is a second law of thermodynamics violation. You're breathing high pressure gas. That would require something to contain it, to be at high pressure. Like your tyre on your car, if it's even got the tiniest of hole in, the gas will equalise with the available volume or surrounding gas pressure, which must be in containment. To be in a pressurised system, we can't have a 10 to the minus 17 torr sky vacuum to travel through to the moon and look back at high pressure gas not expanding into that volume. That's a straight up violation of the second law of thermodynamics. So as for, is flat Earth in a sky vacuum? Yeah, it's the way the controlled opposition have put the narrative into the mind's eye of the public to make it easier to overcome when they're lying about using an Earth that's measured flat to reify into a sphere-shaped world in a sky vacuum. For you to then ask if the flat world is in a sky vacuum, definitely not. It's a violation of natural law. Second law of thermodynamics. Gas fills space, and we're breathing the stuff.
Saying this is the sum total of reality.
Could be the sum total of our reality as we know it. Now,
fair.
Go on.
The pizza pie in a sky vacuum is actually, if you look mathematically at what they present, what heliocentrists are saying. But for some reason, they've been able to ascribe the people opposing them that position to argue against that.
Okay, so
their mathematics uses a flat plane angle measurements to assert this space that the flat plane will be traveling through now. It's an absurdity.
Yeah, they're hijacking a flat Earth at every opportunity to describe an infinitely distant star field in the celestial sphere model. You've got an antipodal flat plane, north and south centric. That's to say, Polaris centric and whatever they're claiming the south is centric with. But those two systems are sandwiched antipodal in a model that has two flat planes, one on top of the other. That is actually their model, but they've created it as a one-sided with no antipodal positioning, and then they ask the flat earthers what's underneath. You're like, well, for the reification and transposition to PZX triangles onto a spherical protractor wrapped around a flat plane used to measure angles to the stars to document their positions above the flat ground, and then reify into Polaris-centric latitude measurements with respect to their areas of equal altitude wrapped around a sphere for you to then put in motion, is essentially two flat planes on top of each other floating through a sky vacuum that's been derived from orbital Keplerian motion, based also on flat Earth measurements. My God, I don't have enough breath to get through the whole convoluted gaggle screw that is the origins of flat Earth measurements into heliocentric, antipodal positioned, flat planes with a celestial sphere in a sky vacuum based on Kepler and our measurements derived from, what did we have earlier? Al-Biruni. I mean, it's such a convoluted mess. It's no wonder no one can get to the bottom of it if you're a normie.
Yeah, okay. Sum total of our physical reality.
And think, if this was sum total, wouldn't we all be aware of this instead of this?
No, because physically that thing would still be. I mean, I know the scale's a little bit off. That thing would be at least 20.
That's where you can lead in. That's where, Mark, you can have that positive spin I was describing earlier. Well, wouldn't it be like this? Yeah, it'd be like it for both. Both would come from the angle measurements with respect to Polaris. Go ahead, John.
Right, but he said if it was like this, wouldn't we be aware of it? Well, they are aware of it, as you pointed out earlier. NASA also measures angles off a flat Earth. When people fly level, that is with respect to horizontal, they are very much aware of it, but they don't see it because their religious belief.
On screen, we've got a depiction of a guy showing you in visual terms what an elevation angle measurement is with respect to a star with a 90-degree position below its ground position, so you can draw out a circle of equal elevation with that angle, that measurement. Those angle measurements get turned into a ground that's bending. So in the same respect, this angle could be describing the height of a mountain for Al-Biruni off a flat plane, for him to then bend the ground he's measuring flat. Shout out to Brian Bender again, who joined as a penguin. Thank you for joining as a member. There's several members-only clips that I've just released over the weekend. They'll probably get released tomorrow. Anyway, let's carry on. We'll do it a little bit longer. I saw it peak up at 125 people watching, so very warm welcome to all of you if you've just joined us. Thank you for joining. Please share the show. Indeedy do. If you've not done so already. So yeah, please smash that share button. It's just a couple of clicks, and it'll take you straight to a whole list of your favourite Facebooks and Twitters and Bebos and MySpaces. You just click on it once and it'll automatically put a link to this show, so you can just press share. It's literally like 2 clicks and you can share the show with friends. There's a good chance that the 122 currently people watching are only here because the regulars who watch live regularly share the show. As I don't know for a fact, we're not getting YouTube algorithmic love to get 122 people here. So also a massive thank you to all of you who've smashed that share button, as that is the reason we've got a reasonably decent audience today. So thank you very much to all of you who've shared. Please share if you've not done so already. And another massive thank you to Brian for joining as a penguin.
20,000 miles wide. We're talking about something that's so big that everyone you know would have never ever figured. Even we didn't even have the tech to detect this thing until about 1960. I mean, remember, NASA wasn't formed until 1958, and then the Antarctic Treaty was put into place where they locked down Antarctica. Coincidentally, the same time the Van Allen radiation belts were discovered. But that's a whole.
New worlds, Mark. New worlds. Antarctica's just going to confuse people. It's there as the feast of nonsense. It's conspiratorial. Meanwhile, people can definitely relate to the new worlds discovered in what was formerly known as outer space, navigated to with respect to a flat plane of reference with angles that can only be used if Earth is being measured flat. Shout out to Theo Megawerty. He says, Joe, Jesse, who's next? The circle keeps closing. Who's he talking about? Joe, Jesse?
Might be the name of the guy that's speaking with him, not the primary one that was first. I think it's the guy that was speaking with him now.
Okay, is the guy, the black guy, or the guy who's in opposition to Mark? The moderator, or maybe you can clarify, Theo. We don't know who you're talking about. I don't know any of these, other than Mark, I don't know any of these principals' names.
Whole other thing.
Me neither.
But
is that I?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll clarify.
Around the edge of the Earth, on the inside? Oh.
On the inside, the Antarctic coastline is the only continent that would not look anything like this. That is, Antarctica would be stretched around the entire outer edge. But the Antarctic coastline wouldn't be the edge of the world. There would be no cosmic waterfall. It would still go in.
Just going to rewind time a little bit. Formerly, the edge of the world was here, and we thought there was nothing beyond it. Then we went out sailing, and fortunately we had these stars that we could use off a flat Earth and their angles, so we could find our way back. And with those stars, we expanded out our territory to these worlds. Oh, what's that? You live on one of them. Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah, we got a really good idea of where they were and how to find our way about, and we mapped out the whole world with these systems like latitude and longitude. And yeah, they all rely on Earth being flat, and they wouldn't work unless we're flat. So yeah. Oh, by the way, your globe came from all that as well. Yeah. They derived the spherical system off that flat system. It comes secondary to the measurements of Earth itself. Obviously, we've got to measure Earth, and obviously these flat maps, flat charts, flat systems, flat grids, flat elevation angle measurements, flat sea levels, they're all flat. That's how we measure it. And you're probably well aware of that and didn't even know it. Go on, John.
But to introduce the Antarctica, right, in the way that it is being done, I fundamentally disagree with, because it isn't. It's to play in to their argument to begin with, because they have a claim that the circumference of a sphere is blocking things. The edge of a sphere, aka its circumference, is blocking things in the distance. They have a positive claim about that. And then is kind of pushing it onto us to ask us about our edge. I never claimed an edge, and I'm not going to, because I've never seen an edge, or I don't even know how to describe it.
They
So
have an edge.
What are they talking about?
They're talking about their edge projected onto us when they extract out a flat Earth elevation angle measurement, or dip. That would be a depression angle when measuring heights of mountains, for example. They then infer that the flat world they measured to get heights falls away from them and creates an edge to block your view at the optical dissolution point. We've had to research, even though it's not part of anything we would claim. We're not claiming an edge. Nevertheless, they have an edge. They had boats falling over it right up until 2020 when we debunked it. At which point, we then started pointing out that they were only asking us about an edge because their edge of a globe in the form of the horizon failed miserably. So it's far easier to start asking us why we're not falling off the edge of a pizza pie in a sky vacuum when that sky vacuum's come from flat Earth measurements. And in reality, their assertion of having infinitely distant stars is in respect to antipodal flat Earths with the celestial sphere wrapped around it. So they needed a weak-ass argument overcome, and they didn't have one, so they started asking us about our edge. Their edge was debunked in 2020. Black Swan. If Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, derived from flat Earth measurements, then every distance to horizon could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That's their edge. Distance to horizon in the Black Swan is beyond the physical geometric limitations of an edge. Therefore, the horizon's not an edge. Earth's not a sphere, or it would have an edge. For boats to fall over and that. It doesn't. We debunked it in 2020.
Thousands of miles. And again, that's what Admiral Byrd, the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, he explored for the last 30 years of his career, from 1928 until his death in 1956, 1957, where he explored Antarctica. And then,
like I say, Mark, new worlds. New worlds. You won't have to convince anybody of anything. They found the new worlds, navigated to them flat, out in space. That was the area out towards the horizon, utilised as a flat plane of reference for measurement with a tool called the sextant. Only possible if Earth is flat. You can lean on these things and no one will argue with you. There's no speculation. There's no conspiracy. There's no ambiguity. This is riddled. We call this Feast of Nonsense.
And finally, they locked it down. But I got to address something real quick, because again, I know we have a ton of time, which is the biblical side of things. Because I read up in your biography and I like it. I love the fact that you're trying to mesh in some way, shape or form, science with religion. I think it's a lofty goal. Don't know if it's going to happen. But I know it's a great goal. I mean, you and I are on the same page with some of the stuff.
Are you a Christian?
I am a Christian.
And you believe in God?
Absolutely, I believe in God. In fact, one of the default things of believing in this is that it was created. Default. If you believe that the
yeah, amen. I can't disagree with you there.
in the shape of a sound stage, then it was built by someone. And then you only have two choices. It's like, okay, well, an advanced civilization that we don't know about, or the divine. And really at that point, you're just splitting hairs. But there's some biblical stories which work so much better with this than it does with this. For example, and I'm not going to quote chapter or verse exactly.
I understand where Mark is coming from. After you know it's flat, it does affect how you believe. But it is not a belief required. There is no requirement for belief to measure Earth flat. That's how you measure it. I don't think this was good that he put this into I believe in this, and therefore this belief changes. No, I know this, therefore this belief changes.
But Mark doesn't know this. That's the problem. He doesn't know.
You don't know what Mark doesn't know.
I know he don't know because he don't say anything about how Earth is measured flat.
Well, the thing is, if he does know Earth is measured flat and the logical implications of that statement, because of the epistemology of the word measure, if he understands what that statement means, then he's intentionally wrong. So he can't know that it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's lying when he said, I believe this because of that.
So in conclusion, you're saying, or Neil's saying, he doesn't know Earth's flat then? Like, no, it's flat.
Exactly. He's still on a belief. He believes everything, all his evidences point to flat rather than globe. But he doesn't have that stamp that we have, and we got to get it to him.
The story of Joshua, when he asked to hold the sun, God to hold the sun and the moon in the sky for an extra day so he could slay more enemies, right? So
you're right, Neil. This is crap standard.
So much tougher to do in a heliocentric model because you have to stop the Earth, you have to stop the solar system and everything around it. I mean, you have to stop it.
No.
Yeah, this is rubbish. I hate this. It's like you'd have to stop the Earth that you're still fantasizing as a ball. Okay, so my ball that I still visualize as being the place I live has to stop. Oh, how am I going to do that? You're still on a ball conceptualizing this with you. You know what I mean?
Not only that, Nathan, not only that.
Nearly there, Neil.
The Christian just heard. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's like saying we see too far. We see too far. The ball should be in the way. You know that ball you're going to conceptualize with me? We're going to work out why it's not getting in our way when it definitely should be. It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you leading them into conceptualization of their already in existence reification of a globe that's come from flat Earth measurements? They're already reifying it. Go on, Neil.
Yeah, and plus, what the Christian is going to do is say God could do anything. So if he stops the Earth from rotating, he's God. He will stop all the catastrophes because he's God. So it's crap to even bring it up.
Oh, you don't. So
yeah, stop the rotation of the Earth.
No, you don't.
To stop the sun and the moon in a heliocentric model?
You have to realize there's a description of what they see in the sky. There are phenomena that make it look that way.
My point. And that is, if you're just talking about phenomena in the sky, it's much easier to hit pause on this than his pause on this. And one more thing, well, if we're going down that road, how about the Tower of Babel? That's one of my favorites. That is a bridge to heaven, right? Big tower going up there. Well, where's it going if it's on a spinning ball that's spinning this way, going sideways in all these directions? That tower's going nowhere. Build a tower in here, you know exactly where it's going.
I think the Feast of Nonsense is just how most people deal with their beliefs, and that's what it's been. That's how it's developed. Is just, how do I believe? Do I believe it's flat, or do I believe it's this globe? Well, that's a false dichotomy, because their globe is measured flat, and the flat Earth is measured flat. What are you arguing about? What is the point of contention? Does anybody in this group know?
The biblical model, and I'm on your side in a lot of ways. The Bible is a flat earth book, in our opinion. There's only one chapter and verse that even comes close, and that's Isaiah 40:22, which says, "He who sitteth upon the circle of the earth." Again, circle's not ball, it's not globe, it's not sphere, it's circle. That's a circle.
You say?
I would say the Bible is largely silent on what the shape of the Earth is, because one, most people throughout the history of Earth wouldn't know what it was,
right.
And it's only in fairly recent times that we've been able to do that. So, in this sense, if we were to find out at the end of the day that the Earth is flat, it wouldn't really bother me. There's nothing about biblically that would, one way or the other, bother me with that.
Oh no, and
what I would go back to is the fact that I do find a coherence in the way God sustains creation. And the fact that I can see, as we're studying what's going on out in the cosmos, is so consistent with what we see here. That fits very well with a God who's the creator of everything. How that is, we're studying what actually happens here on Earth, and that I can drop balls, those sorts of things. Whereas,
well, how it's measured in that.
What's going on out there is not.
I do like how this gentleman was quick to point out that the nature of Earth and is not really relevant to my belief about the Bible and how that's interpreted, because that isn't the correct standard for the information you're discussing. So I'm glad he said that, but I hate to see the opponent make the good point.
That seems a little incoherent for a God, again, who wants us to know him.
And I hear you. I would respond with God, because people are saying, are you saying that, because I say you don't have to have a solar system or a galaxy or a universe. Even Carl Sagan said there's an awful lot of wasted space that doesn't seem to be doing anything, and I know we can get into dark matter and dark energy, but let's not.
Well, I think you can make an argument that the universe needs to be the way it is for life to be here.
Potentially.
In the universe.
Potentially, but at the same time, I would also say that God's more efficient than that. So I'm not saying that God's lazy. You're just like, why? Well, God can make everything, including a giant solar system. It would be effortless. It's going, yeah, but God's also really efficient. And that is, if 99.99% of the population believe the world that is presented to them, stars and the planets are whatever they are told, even though I believe they're signs and wonders and a giant clock system, does that clock system have to be millions of light years away? Can't it be close and intimate and made just for you? We've had a lot.
Are there other planets inside of your flat Earth?
Well, yes, but they're not something you can land on. They literally would be like planets in a planetarium. They would be lights in the sky.
So would Jupiter actually exist, or is it one of those things that is just projected up onto the dome?
Yes, it would just be a projection.
Okay.
Again, Jupiter in this would be no different than Jupiter in a planetarium. And I've had people, amateur astronomers, who have said, "I've seen the moons of Jupiter in in my telescope."
If he's going to use the Bible and he's going to say God could do anything, it does not describe it in the Bible. All he says is that he created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they're all inside the firmament. End of story if you're going to use the Bible. That's how it's described.
And with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.